At exactly 11:36 a.m. in Plover, Wisconsin, J.D. Vance stepped onto a makeshift stage inside a manufacturing plant dressed in Trump's favorite costume. A dark blue suit, a deep red tie, and a fake grin meant to hide just how awkward and unqualified he is for the position he holds. The Holly's long, cool woman in a black dress was blasting from the speakers. Saturday night, I was downtown working for the FBI, sitting in a nest of bad men. A soundtrack chosen to evoke the kind of blue-collar familiarity they believe will excite the crowd and create an artificial sense of connection for those watching from home. Flags were everywhere, each one strategically placed to stay in frame no matter where the cameras pointed. The crowd, small but prepped, dutifully chanted USA, USA, USA on cue. He quieted the crowd with a rushed, almost impatient string of thank you all, thank you, please, please, and then launched straight into the messaging points he was there to deliver. It started with an awkward attempt to pronounce Wisconsin in a folksy way, like someone trying to fake a local accent. It landed with a thud. He paused, waited for a laugh that never came, and then quickly pivoted onto the only word that truly mattered in the 45-minute performance to follow: fraud. And it wasn't just a word he dropped once. It was the centerpiece of his whole performance, and he started laying the groundwork within seconds of speaking. I think Kelly Loeffler, our small business administrator, is one of the unsung heroes of the Trump administration. She has single-handedly rooted out hundreds of billions of dollars, and then he caught himself. Hundreds of millions of dollars, I should say, and on to billions of dollars over the next couple years of fraud against the American people. Billions, millions, it didn't matter. Whatever number sounded scary enough to make people believe someone was stealing from them. The actual figure was irrelevant. That's the game. And it all orbed around that one word, fraud. The word he was sent there to test. But then, without skipping a beat, he pivoted from government-scale theft to the most painful self-serving moment of the entire speech. He said, "I will say, I took special note of one thing she said." He was still talking about Loeffler. Continuing, "Kelly said, 'I am the coolest vice president in American history.' And I said, 'Kelly, that is a low standard. That is a very low bar, but I do think I clear that bar.'" So 1 second he's claiming hundreds of billions of dollars have been stolen from the American people. The next, he's fishing for a laugh about how cool he thinks he is. The pivot was so jarring, so tone-deaf, that it almost felt like a talking point someone had written for him because they realized it doesn't really matter what comes out of his mouth anymore. Just throw something out there, hope for a giggle, give the base a soundbite they can repeat like J.D. Vance, coolest vice president ever. It's the same Trump formula. Say something absurd enough that it becomes a headline, and nobody talks about the substance, or in this case, the complete absence of it. It was just weird. And one political observer online captured it perfectly when they pointed out that Vance apparently believes he's cooler than Thomas Jefferson and Theodore Roosevelt. And maybe someone should have told him that Thomas Jefferson authored the Declaration of Independence. He shaped the very foundation of American democracy and then served as vice president before becoming the third president of the United States. And Harry Truman was vice president for just 82 days before Franklin Roosevelt died. And the full weight of ending a world war landed on his shoulders, including the decision to use a nuclear weapon. Lyndon Johnson was riding just 2 cars behind Kennedy in Dallas when the shots rang out, and within hours he was standing aboard Air Force One, hand raised, taking the oath of office while Jackie Kennedy stood beside him in a blood-soaked pink suit. He didn't crack jokes about being cool. He went home and he passed the Civil Rights Act, the Voting Rights Act, and Medicare. He reshaped American life in the shadows of a national tragedy. And then Theodore Roosevelt. He was vice president for less than a year before President McKinley was assassinated. He became the youngest president in American history and went on to break up monopolies, protect millions of acres of public land, and redefine the role of the federal government in standing up for ordinary Americans against unchecked corporate greed. Because even in a room full of supporters, they could feel how deeply disrespectful it was, not just to the office of the president, but to the memory of the men who were so instrumental in the shaping of our country. And the fact that he said it anyway told us everything. how egotistical and insecure he is, and how bad he is at hiding either one. And that's the part Trump's enablers are watching very closely right now, because J.D. Vance wasn't in Plover, Wisconsin just to spread fear about the made-up crisis of a country under attack by fraud, or to help a vulnerable Republican win a tight election. He was there to audition for the role of Trump's replacement, and the audition is not going well. And aside from being an ineffective communicator, who is J.D. Vance? That's the real question that really needs to be asked, because we all know who Donald Trump is. He's a terrible person. He's cruel and dangerous, but at least we can see him coming. His chaos, his instability, it comes naturally to him. He doesn't know how to hide it, and he doesn't try. That's actually one of the things that's ever worked in our favor. We always know what we're dealing with. But J.D. Vance is a chameleon, and that is something else entirely. A chameleon is more dangerous because chameleons convince people they fit in, that they are safe, that things are normal when they aren't. J.D. Vance is anti-immigrant while being married to a woman of Indian ancestry. He was a never-Trumper who once compared Trump to Hitler and warned about the rise of fascism. He has switched religions multiple times. He has been all sorts of things, and then suddenly, overnight, he became Donald Trump's biggest fan. We don't know who J.D. Vance actually is. But even more dangerous than a man who is openly evil is a man who can change his skin to match whatever room he walks into. It's what authoritarian movements have always counted on to grow and succeed. Not just the tyrant, but the polished functionary who knows how to smile while turning the screws. The man who blends in until it's almost too late. And that's exactly what people behind the curtain are counting on, because people like Peter Thiel, the billionaire tech investor and co-founder of Palantir, is the man who bankrolled Vance's political career. Thiel is an immigrant himself. He can never be president, so his closest path to the Oval Office is by proxy, through the man he built from scratch precisely because there was no real core to begin with. Just an ambition ready to be molded and placed one heartbeat from the presidency. And if Trump's decline continues, and it will, Vance is the vessel through which the Trump enablers, the people pulling all of Trump's strings, intend to keep their grip on this country. And that's why he was in Wisconsin, wearing Trump's costume, playing Trump's music, and standing in front of Trump's flags and trying to make Trump's base believe he's one of them. Because if the MAGA movement needs a new mask, J.D. Vance is the one they're ready to wear. And there's a reason they're pushing him this hard, this fast. Because the President of the United States has all but disappeared. Since delivering that record-breaking 1 hour and 48-minute State of the Union address just a few nights before, Trump has held no press conferences, no public remarks, and no open press events. Every meeting on his schedule has been closed to cameras. His Truth Social account has been nearly dormant, and the few posts that have appeared don't sound like him. They read like staff work, scrubbed, sterile, almost all missing that unhinged, barely coherent energy that has always made his voice unmistakable. The only visible moment from the president was a carefully staged, unannounced photo op with New York City Mayor Zoran Mondami. The meeting wasn't on either leader's public schedule. There were no press questions or remarks. No open pool, just Trump seated behind the Resolute desk, grinning and holding up newspaper printouts that Mondami's team had made for him, like a child showing a drawing that was going to be hanging on the refrigerator. Mondami stood, Trump sat, and that was it. And 2 nights before that, this man delivered the longest State of the Union address in modern history, and the best they could manage was a seated photo op with props. And the only post shared on Truth Social that day that even remotely sounded like Donald Trump was about the White House ballroom. A judge had dismissed a challenge to its construction, and Trump, or whoever was posting for him, wrote, it said, the ballroom construction, which is anticipated to also handle future inaugurations and large state visits, is ahead of schedule and under budget. It will stand long into the future as a symbol to the greatness of America. That last line really stuck with me. It will stand long into the future. That is not how Donald Trump talks. Donald Trump talks about himself. He talks about winning, about enemies, about revenge. He doesn't write lines about things that will outlast him. That reads like a man or a team around him reckoning with mortality. And I keep asking the same question over and over again. Who is the real Donald Trump right now? Because either that State of the Union took everything out of him, and he's now in some kind of physical or cognitive recovery, or the deterioration we've all been watching for months just took another steep turn downwards, and his handlers are no longer managing the chaos, they're managing the silence. And the polls that dropped the same week that J.D. Vance was being paraded across the stage in Wisconsin tell the story the White House doesn't want anyone to read. But we already know. A Reuters-Ipsos poll found that 61% of Americans now say Trump has become erratic with age. That includes 30% of Republicans. The same poll found that 45% of Americans describe him as mentally sharp, down from 54% in September of 2023. Those numbers didn't come out of nowhere. They came from what we've all been watching: a president who falls asleep in meetings, whose schedule keeps getting tighter, and whose handlers are now managing the silence instead of the chaos. The people around him see those numbers too. They know what's coming. They know the clock is running out, and that is why J.D. Vance was in Wisconsin. And while Vance was on that stage, he wasn't just selling the big fraud lie to the base. He was selling a version of the president that doesn't exist. Because one of the most telling moments of the entire speech came when Vance described his supposed daily conversations with Trump. He said, "Here's the thing, it's funny. I talk to the president multiple times a day." It's kind of the job of the vice president. You talk to the president a lot. Every day, the president will say, "What have we done today? Got any more? Got any more?" The president has such an intense work pace. I sometimes think, Mr. President, we've got to take stock of all the incredible things that we have accomplished over the last year. An intense work pace. That is what J.D. Vance wants us to believe. That the 79-year-old president, who has been visibly falling asleep in meetings, who had practically disappeared from public life for 2 straight days, who confuses countries and can't carry a straight thought, is somehow burning through the day demanding more from his team. Nobody believes that. The president does not have an intense work pace. He watches television all day. He posts on social media. He rages at perceived enemies. And the only thing being accomplished are the systematic dismantling of our rights, the gutting of our institutions, and the deepening of suffering across this country. There are no incredible things to take stock of, unless cruelty counts as an accomplishment. But Vance said it anyways, because that's how this works. You say the lie often enough, with enough confidence, and it starts to fill the space where the truth should be. It crowds out what people can see with their own eyes, and it replaces it with the vision the regime needs them to accept. And they're not doing it because they think it will fool everyone. They're doing it because they believe we're not smart enough to see through it. They believe the American people don't have the mental capacity to think for ourselves. That if they say fraud enough times, we'll be scared. If they say accomplishments enough times, we'll be grateful. And if they say intense work pace enough times, we'll stop noticing the president is disappearing right in front of our eyes. Everything we are watching has happened before. When an authoritarian leader begins to decline, whether from age, illness, or the slow erosion of mind, the moment doesn't stop, it adapts. The machine behind the man was never just about him. It was always about power. And the moment the figurehead starts to falter, the people who built the machine start looking for the next one. After Lenin suffered a series of strokes beginning in 1922, Joseph Stalin didn't wait for him to die. He quietly assumed Lenin's duties, maneuvered himself into position behind the scenes, and built the infrastructure of succession while Lenin was still alive but incapacitated. By the time Lenin died in 1924, Stalin had already secured enough control that the transition was barely a transition at all. The figurehead changed, but the machine kept running. In every personalist regime, the same vulnerability exists. Scholars who study authoritarian systems call it the succession dilemma. The leader builds a cult of personality so powerful that no one is allowed to grow strong enough to challenge him. But that same instinct, the impulse to crush potential rivals, hollows out the leadership pipeline. So when the decline becomes undeniable, there's a scramble, and the scramble is dangerous. Not just for the regime, but for the people living under it. Because desperate movements don't slow down, they speed up, they grab harder, and they become more reckless and cruel because they know the window is closing. And that's what we're watching now. The Heritage Foundation, Peter Thiel, Stephen Miller, Susie Wiles, the network of billionaires and ideologues who spent the better part of 16 years building this machine are staring at the same polls we are. They see the 61%. They see the erosion inside his own base. They know this man is not going to be able to hold this together much longer, and they cannot afford to lose control of the White House, because the White House is how they hold power. It's how they get richer, and for many of them, it's not even about the money. It's about us not having it. It's about keeping ordinary Americans desperate enough, exhausted enough, and distracted enough that we can't fight back. It's about control. It has always been about control. But now that their useful idiot is deteriorating, they need the next one ready. The problem is, the next one isn't working. The crowd in Wisconsin wasn't feeling it, and the people behind the curtain are watching all of it and asking themselves the question that every authoritarian movement dreads. What happens when the figurehead fades and the replacement can't carry the torch? That question is the crack in the wall, and it's the one we need to push against with everything we have, because even as the regime stumbles, they're working to make sure we can't see it. But while he was talking, something else happened that should have every one of us on high alert. Because the same people who destroyed CBS News are now on the verge of owning CNN. Warner Brother Discovery declared that Paramount's bid to acquire the entire company, that's including CNN, HBO, and all of their studios, is a superior proposal to the Netflix deal that had been on the table for months. And Netflix walked away. And that means that David Ellison, the man who took over Paramount just last year, backed by the fortune of his father, Larry Ellison, one of the wealthiest men on the planet, and one of Trump's biggest donors, could soon control not just CBS, but CNN as well. This is the same David Ellison whose Paramount quickly settled Trump's $16 million lawsuit against CBS over their 60-minute interview. The same ownership that installed Barry Weiss, the conservative provocateur, as editor-in-chief of CBS News. The same regime under which reporting critical of the Trump administration has been shelved, softened, or completely cut before it ever reaches the public. And Donald Trump himself has repeatedly publicly called for the sale of CNN in connection with any deal involving Warner Brothers Discovery. He said it out loud. He wanted this, and now it's happening. If this deal goes through, and it appears that it will, the same forces that gutted one of America's most trusted news organizations will now have their hands around the throat of another. And every time a major newsroom is captured, the pipeline of truth gets thinner. The space for accountability shrinks, and the people in power get one step closer to controlling not just the government, but the story of the government. This is how democracies die. And we are running out of traditional ways to stop this attack on the truth, which means the survival of independent media has never mattered more than it does right now. Voices not tethered to corporate messaging, and journalists not answering to billionaires are our last line of defense. And I don't say that lightly. I believe with everything in me that the midterms will be won or lost based on whether enough Americans have access to the truth. So thank you to everyone who is already supporting, sharing, and standing shoulder to shoulder with those of us speaking the truth over propaganda. This may end up being more powerful than any traditional form of protest. And if you're just getting started, here's the most important thing you can do. Identify your top 5 favorite voices in the resistance movement and support them today. We have just over 8 months until the midterms. 8 months to decide, at least for the near future, what kind of country and what kind of world we want to live in. It's going to take all of us, and it's going to be a marathon, not a sprint. But I know we're up for the battle. We have already proven that Americans are capable of persistence and courage. This is going to be another time we prove to the history books that we are a people who do not back down when it matters most. The machine behind Trump is scrambling. The replacement is failing his audition, and the polls are showing the cracks in his grip on this country. And every single day, more people are waking up to what this really is. That is why I still have hope for America, and you should too. If you've made it this far, we're probably on the same page and definitely on the same side of history, the right side. I'm working hard to spread this message and reach as many people as possible. So if you can, please take a moment and make sure you're subscribed to my channel and give this video a thumbs up. For all of my daily posts, you can find me on Substack by searching Heather Delaney Reese, and I've included the link for you below. There's a free option, so please sign up. And remember, no matter how dark the days get, I'll be here every single day, and together, we will always have hope for America. I'll see you tomorrow.